A story that seemed harmless but left me frozen in place. Why would a glass of cold water after lunch make him collapse? How could someone perfectly healthy who had just washed his hands and taken a sip of water end up in the ER diagnosed with brain ischemia? And the question that haunts me the most, if it were your father, would you have seen it coming? I'm a brain specialist with over 30 years of experience treating older adults. I've seen hundreds of stroke cases, both with and without warning signs. But there was one afternoon that left me completely still. Mr. Howard, 71 years old, lived with his wife in Oregon. Stable health, good blood pressure, sharp memory, balanced meals. That day, he had a typical lunch: seared salmon, brown rice, steamed vegetables. Then, as usual, he poured himself a glass of cold water. And just minutes later, while washing his hands in the kitchen, he collapsed onto the floor. His wife screamed. They called 911. I met him in the MRI room. The scan showed his brainstem had just suffered a transient ischemic attack. The preliminary cause, sudden cerebral vasoconstriction triggered right after the meal, linked to the cold water. No fall, no impact, no chest pain. Just one glass of cold water after lunch. And I knew if I didn't speak up about this, there would be more Mr. Howards. It could be your uncle. Or your father. This is why I say, as a brain doctor, I strongly advise avoiding cold water after lunch because it can silently constrict blood vessels. But what troubles me even more is that this wasn't the first time I had seen it. And before it happened, they had all experienced tiny signals that no one realized were warnings. The small signs you still think are normal: it's just feeling sleepy after lunch. Got a bit dizzy from sitting too long, nothing unusual. A stiff neck and shoulders, probably from sleeping in a bad position. Have you ever said those things? I've heard hundreds of patients or their family members repeat those exact phrases right before they walked into my office, no longer as alert as they were the day before. There was a 76-year-old woman who came in because she felt sleepy every afternoon. Her daughter thought, "Mom's old now, she just needs more rest." But the truth was, she wasn't actually sleeping deeply, she was slipping into a state of pre-ischemic drowsiness. Another elderly man often felt lightheaded when standing up after meals. His son assumed it was just postural hypotension. But in reality, when we did an MRI, his carotid arteries showed signs of mild vasospasm whenever there was a sudden shift in circulation. I'm not telling you this to make you panic. I'm telling you this so you start listening to the tiniest signals. The things we brush off as normal might just be the opening notes of a stroke quietly approaching. Because for the brain, there's no such thing as small. Only signs we've never thought to interpret differently. So what actually happens inside your body after just one sip of cold water? Behind that refreshing chill is a full chain reaction almost no one ever explains. What really happens when you drink cold water after a meal? I've been drinking cold water after meals since I was young. What's the harm? It feels cool in my throat, light in my stomach. Isn't that good? I understand. Because you've probably never been shown what actually happens inside your body after that seemingly harmless sip of water. Let me tell you in the simplest way. After every meal, your digestive system needs a large amount of blood to process the food. At that moment, blood from all over your body, including a portion from the brain, is redirected to the stomach and small intestine. What does that mean? It means your brain is temporarily yielding the road to digestion. And that's fine unless you suddenly pour a wave of cold into your body. Cold water with a temperature 15-20 degrees lower than your body causes blood vessels to constrict instantly in order to preserve core temperature. In younger people, blood vessels are still flexible, so this reaction usually just causes a chill. But in people over 60 where blood vessels are less elastic, this reaction compresses blood flow abruptly, especially in the carotid and cerebral arteries, the very places that require constant circulation. Picture this: You're watering plants with a steady hose, and someone suddenly squeezes the hose in the middle. The water flow stutters, sprays everywhere, becomes erratic. That's how blood flow to the brain gets disrupted after a glass of cold water. Sometimes, your brain might only react with a bit of sleepiness, heaviness in the head, or brief dizziness. But if you do this every day, after every meal, each time becomes a tiny snip at the stability of cerebral circulation. And then, one day, just one more small trigger, low blood pressure, lack of sleep, a weather shift, and the body can no longer compensate. And when that happens, what will protect your memory, your alertness, even your life? I once explained this to a patient, a grandmother not unlike your own mother. And from her lips I heard a sentence I'll never forget. Grandma Mary, and a habit that seemed harmless. I just like drinking cold water every noon, doctor. That's what Grandma Mary, 69 years old, living in Gainesville, Florida, told me during her first visit. She's a traditional grandmother, living with her daughter and 2 small grandchildren. Still cooks, cleans, and plays crossword puzzles every night. Everyone in the house believed she was perfectly sharp until one day she walked to the market and forgot her way home. That was the first time. After that, she began mixing up the names of dishes while cooking. Forgot whether she'd turned off the stove. One afternoon, she called her granddaughter by the name of the housekeeper from 20 years ago. Her daughter brought her in for a checkup. They suspected Alzheimer's, but the results revealed something else. Her brain MRI showed signs of mild ischemia in the hippocampus, the area directly tied to memory. Not Alzheimer's, but chronic hypoperfusion, built up over a long period. I asked her about her daily habits. She said, "Every noon I finish eating and then have a glass of iced water. Feels cool in my throat, so refreshing." That's when I knew I had to intervene. I advised her to switch to warm water at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, not to drink immediately after eating but to wait 15 minutes. I told her to take a gentle 3-minute walk around the house after lunch. And I asked her daughter to gently massage her neck and shoulders each noon. After 3 weeks, Grandma Mary came back. She looked at me, smiling brighter than before. Then she shared, "This morning I remembered the cake my daughter used to love as a child. It's been so long since I could recall that name." We both laughed. But my heart quietly stirred. One memory returned thanks to a warm glass of water. A brain given space to breathe through one small change. A mother restored to her rightful place in the hearts of her children and grandchildren. All because we dared to ask a question, that familiar habit. Is it truly harmless? And if you are wondering, so where should I begin changing? Don't worry, I'll walk you through it step by step right now. Things you can start doing today to protect your brain's blood vessels. Doctor, if I can't drink cold water, then what should I do? A patient once asked me that, and I answered with the same actions that helped Grandma Mary regain her memory. You see, we don't need to change our whole lives to stay mentally sharp. We just need to choose the right small actions at the right time. Start with the glass of water after lunch. Instead of pouring cold water, switch to a glass of warm water, just 98 plus 104 degree Fahrenheit, gently warm enough so your throat isn't shocked, and your blood vessels don't get squeezed suddenly as a defense reflex. Because believe it or not, when cold water enters the stomach, your body doesn't feel refreshed, it feels threatened. And the first thing it does is tighten blood vessels, especially around the head and neck areas already short on blood after eating. But don't drink it immediately. After eating, your body is like a busy train station. The stomach needs blood for digestion. If you pour more water in at that moment, it will dilute digestive acids, disrupt the process, and worse, scatter blood flow, making the brain hungry once again. So, wait 15-20 minutes after eating before drinking water. By then, your body has settled down and your brain won't have to sacrifice more blood. When you stand up, don't just stay seated. I know many people finish eating and then sit in one spot, watch TV, or even doze off. But try something different. Just stand up, take a few steps around the house, gently. A 3-minute walk won't tire you out, but it gets your blood moving again, like gently stirring a cold cup of coffee to warm it up. And don't forget your neck and shoulders. That's the gateway for blood to reach the brain. If you've ever seen your mom rub her neck, or your dad squeeze his wrist after eating, maybe they were trying to feel what their brain was missing. Gently rub the back of your neck with your hand, from your neck to behind your ears, as if awakening the blood flow. Or ask a loved one to help you, like a loving gesture through touch. Finally, if you feel sleepy, don't lie down right away. Lying down immediately after a meal is an open invitation to trouble for digestion and circulation. Instead, sit, lean back gently in a chair. Close your eyes for 5 minutes. Breathe slowly. And after that, get up and take another short walk. These things may seem small, but if you do them every noon, you'll notice something surprising. Your head feels lighter. Your eyes look brighter. And your memory starts coming back. Not because of medication. Not from long treatments. But from one thing, the right habit, repeated long enough. And if you still doubt whether these small changes really help, I want you to hear directly from my patients after just the first 7 days. 7 days of change, a feeling of revival. Doctor, I didn't think it would work this quickly. That's what I hear most often from those who've tried it. You know, I never promise miracles. I never say, you'll be completely cured in a week. But one thing I know for sure, the brain responds very quickly when you stop hurting it. And those first 7 days are when the difference is felt most clearly. On the first day, many people feel strange. No more familiar iced water after meals. Just a warm glass, bland, less exciting. But no one expects that same afternoon, they don't feel the usual post-lunch drowsiness. One elderly gentleman told me, I didn't need to lie down on the sofa. I walked around the house, then read the newspaper right after. By the 3rd day, some people start to notice, why didn't I feel dizzy when standing up today? My head doesn't feel foggy like the past few days. This doesn't happen because their bodies suddenly got stronger, but because the blood flow wasn't blocked around the neck. Circulation started to smooth out again, like a river finally cleared of stones, flowing freely. By the 5th day, many said, I remembered my wife's old phone number. A few days ago, I couldn't recall it no matter how hard I tried. But this morning, it just popped into my head. See? Memories don't disappear. They just get covered in dust. And when the brain gets enough blood, those memories that seemed long gone return, intact. By the 7th day, the most powerful emotions don't come from the person doing the habit, but from their loved ones. A daughter once called me, her voice trembling, Doctor, today, my mom called me by my childhood nickname. She hasn't said it in so long. I thought she had forgotten it completely. I stayed quiet. Because I knew. That was the moment the brain began reconnecting its forgotten neural branches. One small action, one simple name was proof that a memory center was being nourished again. I don't share this to convince you. I simply share what I've witnessed. 7 days, no pills, no machines. Just changing one glass of water, taking a few steps, gently rubbing the back of your neck, and waiting a little before drinking. And yet it could make a father say his child's name again. Make a mother remember an old lullaby. Make a wife no longer feel lost in her own home. But there's still one thing that worries me. It's the millions of people who still believe in things that seem right but are slowly damaging their brains every day. The familiar beliefs quietly strangling your brain's blood flow. There's something I've realized after 30 years in this profession, we don't just get sick from the body but also from what we believe. And sometimes, the thing we trust the most is exactly what keeps us from realizing we're slowly getting weaker. I once asked an elderly man who had just recovered from a minor stroke, "Do you drink cold water every afternoon?" He looked at me, smiled gently, "Since I was young." "It's refreshing, doctor. And I'm used to it." That phrase "used to it" I've heard more times than I can count. Used to. The cooling feeling in the throat. Used to. The icy drink on a summer afternoon. Used to. A habit no one ever warned about. And it was that very familiarity that caused his brain vessels to suddenly constrict on an otherwise ordinary afternoon. Then there was the elderly woman in Texas, 72 years old, who once told me, "Cold water helps cool the body and cleanse the liver, doctor." My child says the same. I didn't argue. I just gently explained, in truth, the body doesn't need to be cooled down after a meal. What it needs then is stable circulation. Cold water doesn't make the liver healthier. It only causes the stomach to tighten, blood vessels to constrict, and the brain to suffer from low blood flow again, but this time, without obvious symptoms. Just a bit more drowsiness. A heavier head. Or forgetting what you were just about to say. Another daughter once told me, "I thought my mom getting forgetful was normal. She's old, everyone forgets." But the truth is, not everyone is like that. I've met grandmothers at 85 who still remember each grandchild's name. Grandfathers at 90 who still play chess every afternoon. It's not age that steals memory. It's poor circulation, wrong habits, and silence that do. What worries me most isn't the strokes. It's how people around normalize the warning signs. Feeling sleepy after meals, slight dizziness when standing, forgetting the name of a dish just cooked. Everyone thinks it's aging. But I know. It's the brain whispering from lack of oxygen. And if we don't listen, one day it will scream. I once failed to intervene early, thinking everything was still fine. Until I witnessed a father wake up, no longer recognizing the daughter he loved most. He woke up but no longer recognized his daughter. I still remember that day so clearly. The weather wasn't too hot, and nothing seemed unusual. Mr. Richard, 73 years old, was having lunch in the garden like always. Grilled chicken, some steamed vegetables, half a bowl of rice. And like every day, he picked up his cold water and drank it all in one go after the meal. 10 minutes later, he stood up, holding a newspaper, about to walk inside. His wife turned away for a few seconds, then heard a noise. He had collapsed onto the wooden floor, unconscious. When I saw him at the hospital, he was still breathing, his heart still beating. But his eyes seemed to look right through everyone. No expression. No response. MRI scans of his brain, the area connecting memory and emotion, had just suffered an acute ischemic episode. Some of the brain cells were already damaged. And no one could be sure what he still remembered. 3 days later, he opened his eyes. His wife cried with joy. His daughter rushed to his bedside, trembling, asking, "Dad, do you recognize me?" He stared straight at his daughter's face. Then softly said a sentence that made my heart sink, "You're the nurse, right?" I stood in the corner of the room, frozen. Not because the case was severe. Not because of any unusual development. But because I knew this could have been completely prevented. If someone had just reminded him, "Don't drink cold water right after eating. Wait a little. Walk a few steps. Listen to your body more gently." Just one timely piece of advice. Maybe by now, he would have said his daughter's name correctly. Maybe that moment wouldn't have broken, but would have been a tight embrace, between a clear-headed father and the daughter still waiting for him to return. You see, the brain is very patient. It will endure for years without complaining. Until one day, when the blood is no longer enough, It can't hold on to the things you love most. And the most terrifying thing isn't that you're no longer alive. It's that you live but no longer connect with your memories, your loved ones, your very self. But the beautiful thing is, we still have a chance. If you just start with one very small change, you can preserve your clarity, your memory, and your very essence, to the end of your life. Mental clarity at 70, no medication, just the right habits. I know. You might be thinking, things have gotten this far, can I really change now? At this age, can my mind really become clear again? And I want to say this with all the sincerity of a doctor who has witnessed thousands of cases involving the aging brain: you're not broken. You're just repeating behaviors that no one ever taught you to do differently. Your brain, even at 60, 70, 80 years old, still has the capacity to adapt, to regenerate, and to remember. As long as the blood flow nourishing it remains steady every day. You don't need expensive brain supplements. You don't need intense workouts. You don't need to change your whole lifestyle. You just need to drink a warm glass of water instead of cold after lunch. You just need to sit still for a few minutes, then take light steps in the yard, instead of lying down right away. You just need to massage the back of your neck, so blood can flow freely to your brain. I've seen people who forgot their way regain their memory. I've seen people who once called their children by the wrong name after 1 month, say their spouse's name correctly, with a smile. I've seen people who seemed disconnected from the world suddenly remember the lullabies they once sang to their grandkids. No miracle. No high-tech devices. Just awareness, the right habits, and a little patience. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to return to yourself, the clear-minded, vibrant version of you that you deserve to be. Because really, keeping your memory means keeping yourself. It means holding on to laughter, familiar names, and meaningful conversations. It means knowing what day it is. Remembering what you just ate. Recognizing the face in front of you as your child, your grandchild, or your life partner. I won't promise you'll change completely in one day. But I can promise this: if you start today, your brain will thank you. And soon, the people you love will thank you too, for choosing to stay clear-minded for the rest of your life. And if this means something to you, stay with me for one more minute. Because the last thing I want to share isn't just for you, it's for the ones you love, too. You deserve clarity and to be called by your name until the end. If you've come this far with me, let me remind you of something very important. We started with what seemed like a simple story, a glass of cold water after lunch. Something seemingly harmless yet capable of constricting brain vessels, leading to ischemia, even stroke. From there, we realized, subtle signs like drowsiness, dizziness, or confusion after eating are not normal. The brain can still recover if you make the right change in memory, emotion, identity can still be preserved, through very small daily habits. You've seen Ms. Mary remembering her granddaughter's favorite cake, an old man recalling his wife's phone number, and a father who no longer recognized his daughter just because the change came too late. I'm not sharing these stories to make you worried. I share them so you can choose to live differently. No rush. No complexity. Just a glass of warm water, a light walk, a gentle neck massage, and a quiet commitment to stay clear-minded, not letting any memory slip away unnoticed. You deserve to be called by your name. You deserve to be alert, clear, and connected to your loved ones every day. And if you start today, you won't walk alone. If this message touches you, do these 3 small things to help spread it. Comment below, "I've made the change." Share this video with someone over 60. And if you want to walk this journey with me, don't forget to follow Thrive 60+, where we tell real stories, just for those who want to live clear and fully, every single day. Are you ready to begin a new day? With ease, awareness, and memory? I believe you can. And I will always be here with you.